I will probably talk about it from a different perspective because I'm one of the founders at Accurat, which started in 2011 in Milan, and then almost immediately moved to New York to open an office here. But like maybe compared to Christian's experience, I started Accurat sort of like already knowing that I wasn't going to be actively a designer anymore in the company. So I'm a designer by training, but I approached Accurat more from the perspective of like designing a studio. So I think it will be reflected in my presentation today. Uh, I'll talk a bit more about like high level how we shaped the business, not necessarily uh, that much about like what we do and how we do it. Let's see if I can advance here. So what is Accurate? Who is Accurate? I won't share directly any project. It's not a portfolio talk, but you will see in the background some images that will give you a sense of the type of work that we do. And I will use the presentation today to take you through our story and share with you a couple of reflections on what we've been thinking recently, how we evolved. And it's very interesting that this conversation happens now because we're in a moment when we are really rethinking how we approach business, of course, driven by what's happening worldwide with technology and everything else. But it's a good moment for me to reflect on these things. So I'll take you through a bit of a history of the firm and present our point of view on the business of information design. We started, as I was saying, in 2011 in Milan and right away in New York, but we started primarily as a graphic design studio working with data visualization. So imagine a team just of people that are expert in like static representations of information, charts, infographics, visual narratives. What you're seeing here is one of our first projects, a collaboration with Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera, where we visualize complex cultural and social phenomenon. And we had like a great opportunity to do whatever we wanted with the page. And that's how we started thinking about how to imagine new visual metaphors to present information, how to shape a more expressive way to represent data in a way. So there was a lot of work that was focused on visual composition, visual metaphors, rhythm, form, but it mostly happened on the static page and also with static data. So telling specific stories out of a finite data set, a story that we could analyze and tell, and that wasn't changing. So what happened, and it's of course very common in our world, is that in the next few years we, of course, started to understand that this way to prevent information had its own limitations. Like the real potential is, of course, in providing people with an opportunity to play with information, to interact with it in a way. So we started sort of like without really noticing like a shift, the first big shift in our firm when we started hiring people that would start coding visualization. So we started building interactive tools. And of course, initially, they were basically just like an interactive version of what we were already doing. So adding a new layer of interactivity to mostly static stories. And this grew over time, but it was the first time we felt like we were introducing not just a technical shift pivot, but more of a cultural one because we started thinking about data in a different way. So like allowing people to form their own understanding of um, phenomena, and this led us basically to become a more hybrid type of company. Where like we started as a graphic design company, we were evolving into uh, a more hybrid model with designers, engineers, and ironically, even though we started primarily as a graphic design team, the years between 2016 to 2019 approximately saw an even more, even deeper shift in our business. Basically, we fully transformed into a company that was primarily building interactive tools for active exploration of data. And the audience started to change, the audience of our tools and therefore our clients. So um, clients were not media outlets or like brands anymore. We started to work with complex organizations, from global corporations to public institutions, and in general, like group of experts that needed to make informed decisions in like increasingly data-rich environment. So we started working with real experts. So our client became over time someone who was like a researcher, an engineer, a scientist, an analyst, someone who had a deep knowledge of the subject matter and of the data. And we were helping them creating expert tools to navigate this complexity without simplifying it. So we sort of like became architects of like tools and platforms that were deeply integrated in our clients' workflows. So this was a big shift. It brought a lot of growth in our team and very rapidly became the bulk of our business, so that we kept the same approach we were using in our first very plain, simple explorations, but to a completely different audience. And this, of course, led to company growth. We know what happened in 2020. We got to 2020 with like our biggest revenues, biggest margin. The business had been growing steadily since 2011, and we got to 2020 when we were 35 people in our team with a plan to grow even further. And of course, when the pandemic hit, it was complex. The first few months, of course, brought their challenges economically. 2020 was the only year when we didn't grow our revenues and we didn't make any profit. But more than that, this sudden stop made us understand that we were growing in a direction that wasn't really, really working for us, because we started to feel some sort of like misalignment between what we were doing as a company and why we started the studio in the first place, because we were scaling, but we realized that we had become very fragile as a business model, because I really relate with what Christian was saying earlier. Scaling a design business consultancy is very complex because you have multiple elements that you have to take care of, and the most natural approach is delegation. Of course, your most senior people become managers, they start to delegate, and we built sort of like a pyramid where our most senior people were spending a lot of time not being designers or engineers, and this created a fragility of the organization that we didn't realize until we were hit by the economical crisis. But even more, we felt the effect in the coming years, because on paper, like if you looked at our company, growth came back. 2021 was as good as 2019, and we kept growing at the same pace as before. But we were more and more realizing that we were growing a business that didn't feel right. There was a lot of infrastructure, a lot of added costs for activities that were not related to generating value for our clients, generating quality, and the whole reason we started our company. The most talented designers and engineers we had were not doing that anymore. And we could feel that this approach had a limit, and the growth that we were still seeing was probably like a tale of like, due to inertia, from previous years, except 2020. We sort of felt like that this growth had become like a goal in and of itself, which is not what we wanted to do. We had outgrown the shape that we imagined initially for the business. So uh, we had to stop and think about it. And starting in 2023, we decided that things were not working. We needed something drastic in a way. We needed to find an opportunity to tear everything down, and start rebuilding. Rebuilding based on what we had learned over the past years about how we deliver quality, what's the value in our work. So we basically took the chance of like people moving on to different opportunities, to rethink how we train people, how we hire, and we started resetting everything. We started flattening our structure again, removing all senior roles that were not directly contributing to the value of the output. And we started to rethink how we organize team, how we lead by example, or like with the junior people. We started introducing this role that no one at Accurat should only manage. We completely removed all layers that separated the quality of the work uh, from the client, and we started more actively to think how we could uh, become more like nimble, inventive, expressive, which is what we had when we started in the beginning. Of course, it was a smaller team. Everyone was hands-on on the work, but the challenge, like the opportunity here, was to do it more than 10 years after with the experience that uh, we built over the years, with the maturity and the technical foundation as well, because in the past 11 years, 12 years, we had learned how to do things better. So the challenge we gave ourselves is like, how do we restart the company, keeping some of the core foundational principles that made us start the company in the first place, but how can we translate it to a more mature context? And this leads to basically now where we're down from 35 to 21 people, and of course, a much more senior team. And growth from an economical perspective hasn't stopped, but the company has changed completely. So we're now in a situation where, like, of course, some of the work has been done, but we want to continue in this direction. Now we have a much more lean and flat structure with much more senior roles. So we let people grow inside the company, but without any dead weights in a way. So without burdening the most talented people with tasks that were not necessarily related to delivering quality. And this allows us now to move faster, go deeper, and like stay closer to the quality of our work. And ultimately, it seems so far it's paying off because this hasn't stopped the growth of the company. Our clients are just willing to pay more for the value that we're generating because we're starting to find again like a way to consistently deliver this value at every interaction. And we're trying in a way to reclaim the spirit, the identity that brought us together in the first place. And this also brought like a big change for us because, as you've seen, like we started with very expressive, communicative work. Then we slowly moved over like with our full weight towards like building functional tools. But we always had this like these two souls uh, as part of like who we are. We got to early 2025 where like let's say late 24 where like 90% of our revenues were coming from technical functional work and just 10% from more expressive experience-related work that is mostly what people see from the outside, because it's also flashiest work, the most colorful, the one you can more easily share with the public. But the core of our business was more in the invisible part. So we decided to split these two souls to make sure that each of these two faces of the same coin could speak to different audiences with different languages. And we created Accurat Tech and Accurat Studio, of course. Accurat Tech is like basically represents this more functional aspect of our work, and Accurat Studio is more, in a way, close to what we set out to do when we started the company. So more design-driven work, output-focused experiences. The work we do with tech more and more is becoming something that has a strong focus on process, on understanding complex systems within organizations and providing solutions that integrate within the processes that are already in place and that try to innovate, often at a very invisible but impactful scale. So the work we do is often based on deep learning from our clients, who are often experts at what they do, the data they work with. So maybe the work we do is characterized by integrating with their teams, their processes, their methodologies, and learning from them before proposing solutions. And it often only affects procedural components. Sometimes it also has a visual output, sometimes something that in a way it's similar to the previous work we were doing. Sometimes it's more related to how things work. On the other hand, the work that we do with Studio, of course, relates more with building meaningful experiences of interaction with data that in a way use design as a means of communication to engage people and sort of bring abstract information into the human realm. All these structural changes that characterize the evolution of services were made possible because we took the time to define and refine some basic principles over the years. And I think that what stayed the same over the years is how we approached problems, how we saw always data as an opportunity more than a constraint. And this led us to develop over the years a couple of working thoughts that support what we're doing. The first of which is this concept that data is never neutral and is always personal, that we developed with this idea of data humanism, sort of connecting data to its most humane qualities. And the second of which is what we're focusing more and more right now, which is recognizing that the value of our work is not necessarily in how we visualize data, but in how we internalize. And I always use the metaphor of the English translator that was a very important figure in businesses until a few years ago. If you wanted to do business internationally, you needed a translator. So you would delegate that part of your business to an external source. And I see our work sort of similar to this. I think that people need to internalize this knowledge about working relation with data and
Gabriele?
this fluency. Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if you have seen me. Okay,
Yes.
do you have let's say 1 minute?
I got
Going to wrap
it.
up? Okay, thanks.
I got it.
Sorry.
So I see um, sort of like um, this need for deeper understanding of the dynamics of data that will then not necessarily end up in generating roles that are connected to data visualization. Because I think ultimately that our profession, as purely as visualizers of information, will inevitably end. And we've seen like what can be done with AI tools. Christian talked about it. Um, our belief is that um, the output, the final output, the visual output will not matter that much anymore. And we have to shift the focus of our profession from making beautiful charts, making beautiful visualization to more upstream strategic thinking. So not the downstream visuals. So, and this is because the craft of like execution is not rare anymore. And it will become more and more democratized in a way. So deciding what to say will become more important than deciding how you say it. And there's a very interesting quote that I got a couple of days ago from Carly Harris. That is, when execution becomes trivial, direction becomes essential. So we see this shift happening every day. And that's why uh, on our side, what we're doing to tackle this challenge is to more and more productize everything we can and standardize our processes, especially related to building tools, because we don't think we will make a difference by building a unique visualization anymore. We will make the difference understanding the challenges and then applying something that can be easily made with technology, with expertise that is more and more diffused in a strategic way. So uh, I don't have answers on how our industry will evolve, but I know that to survive, we will sort of have to remain very intentional about how we grow and what we focus on. So invest in intellectual value more than anything else. So how we think, how we frame problems. Uh, Continue to build our identity as like data native strategists more than people that are focused on a craft. And also what we learn with having a more senior and nimble team is to always stay adaptable, fast, and small, and make sure that you're open to embrace change.